25th of October, and this is a meeting of the Epping Forest District Council Area Planning Subcommittee East. My name is Councillor Ian Hadley. I'm the chairman of the evening. On my far left, I have Laura Kerman on video from Democratic Services. On my left, I have Jane Rogers from the Planning Department. On my right, Vice Chairman Heather Brady. On my far right again, from Democratic Services again, is Gary Woodall, and Steve is the audio-visual controller this evening. Okay, before we start the full meeting, I have to read this out to you. This meeting is to be webcast, and I'd like to remind everyone present that this is a hybrid meeting, will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or other such use by third parties. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Please be aware that if technical difficulties interrupt the meeting that cannot be overcome, I may need to adjourn the meeting. Members are reminded to activate their microphones before speaking. Thank you. Item 2. The voice of public speakers, has that been given?
Yes, Chairman, it has. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3. Apologies for absence.
Chairman, we have apologies tonight from Councillors Richard Morgan, Councillor Payne and Councillor Vaz.
Thank you. Item 4. Declarations of interest. No declarations. Item 5, minutes of the last meeting, 27th of September. Any comments? Agreed. Site visits. Any site visits? Councillor Kesker.
I'm not actually proposing a site visit. I'm just proposing that the committee considers our one application tonight is a site that is before us yet again. It's been before us a number of times, and I doubt if this will be the last time that this location comes up. And I just wanted to put it to the committee whether they thought that a site visit might have been useful.
Thank you. Councillor Whitby.
Yes, Chairman, I was going to propose a site visit too, and so I would encourage Councillor Kesker to put forward a proposal and I'll second it. Okay, so Councillor Kesker, you're proposing that?
Yes, I am now, Chairman. Yes.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll take the opposite view. Actually, there's quite a long history of this particular site, and there has been officers are quite able to clarify the situation. I don't think this needs any further delay, and I think we should just push on with it. I think Mr. Rogers should explain really the full background of this before deciding whether or not we go for a site visit. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I agree with yourself on this one. It's this is for what we have in front of us, a tennis court and a hedge, basically. It's not for the last 10 years of planning, whatever. So if there was a site visit, all you'd see is the tennis court, wouldn't see anything else, or be able to comment on it. But anyway, James, if you'd like to comment.
Yeah, just to comment on that. It is just for a tennis court, and the scope of this application is very narrow in that sense. What's happened on this site previously is immaterial. If we do get to the stage where I give the presentation, members will see that, as commented before, it is a tennis court with some hedging around it and a fence. But obviously I'll leave it to members to decide whether a site visit is necessary.
Councillor Whitehouse, did you have your hand up before Councillor McIver?
I was just going to say, Chairman, we've made a proposal and second. Happy to hear the discussion first, but we do need to vote on it at some stage. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
there's people who still want to speak. Councillor McIver.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't find myself in support of a site visit. However, what I would just remind members of the committee is that should, after we've received the presentation, there be any concern where they believe a site visit may be necessary, after we have voted on the matter, it could be referred to DDMC and a site visit could be arranged there. And I don't think it's appropriate at this stage to have a site visit. That's my personal opinion.
Thank
and
you.
I also think it's a bit late to propose it.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I just come back on one point? Chairman.
Sorry.
if you refer it to DDMC, you cannot order DDMC to take a site visit. If you take a site visit and then determine the application, it goes up to DDMC, then yes, DDMC have to have a site visit as well. But you're a subcommittee of DDMC, so you can't tell DDMC what they should and shouldn't do.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, so can we have a vote, please, on those wishing to have a site visit?
Six, Chairman.
And those against?
8, Chairman.
And those abstaining?
Should be none, Chairman.
Good, thank you. Okay, no site visits. So we come to the first item, EPF/1574/23, Targate Farm, Targate Road, Highway Wronga, CM5, 0EA, on pages 8 to 20. I believe that, James, you'll be taking us through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Yes, so as you know, it's Targate Farm in Magdalen Laver. The application is for the erection of a new tennis court, which will be used incidental to the dwellings that are on the site. The application is before members tonight due to an objection from the parish council and the neighbour, and officers are recommending that planning permission is granted. So members will probably be well aware of this application site at this point. This is Targate Farm within Magdalen Laver. This is the existing site complex, and the small red line site is located here. So unsurprisingly, that is where the tennis court is proposed. So this is an aerial view of the site, which shows these two dwellings, which are now complete. The site, unsurprisingly, given its location, is within the boundaries of the Metropolitan Greenbelt. As I said, the proposals to construct the new tennis court and this associated fencing with it, which is 2.5 metres in height, which should surround it. And again, just as I said before I started the presentation, I just want to remind members that the scope of this application is limited only to the consideration of this tennis court and no other matters, given that this is what's being proposed tonight. So, as I said, it's located here to the north of a garden building here. And in terms of the greenbelt, the proposal would facilitate the playing of tennis, obviously, a sport generally played outdoors and for recreational purposes. Such a use is not inappropriate, providing that it preserves openness of the greenbelt. Now, the tennis court itself, obviously, is small in scale. It's two-dimensional, and whilst the fence would have some impact, it's not excessive. I mean, it's 2.5 metres high. And just to put that into context, you know, under PD, you can erect a fence not adjacent to a high, which is 2 metres high. So this is 2.5 metres high. So it's not an excessively high fence for its purpose. Now, the tennis court sits outside of the curtilage of the dwellings that have previously been approved. Now, the thing to remember is that this approval of this application would not extend the curtilage of these dwellings. So the existing use of the land is essentially a green field. It's sort of a fallow use. And what this would do is put it into a recreational use for the purposes of sport and recreation, which again, as I said, is not inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. And finally, these are the restrictive conditions that I just wanted to highlight to members, which are proposed to be attached to the consent, which three of them together, they are designed to protect the character and appearance of the Greenbelt as a whole, the living conditions of the neighbours and the character of the area. So we're talking no external light to make sure that that's not excessively harmful to a neighbour. That the mesh of the fencing is finished in a dark green colour. That's a standard condition for this sort of thing for greenbelt uses. And lastly, and probably importantly for this, is that it can only be used for purposes incidental to the enjoyment of occupiers of the dwellings approved under the original application. The subsequent applications that have followed. And for no other person, party or company. So again, that's just to make sure that it's essentially for the enjoyment of those only and not for business purposes, not for anything else. So all things considered, officers consider, given the very narrow, limited scope of the application, that planning permission should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two speakers tonight. The first one being the objector, Mr. Jim Padfield. Jim, you have 3 minutes.
Chairman, could I ask the officer to put the plan up, the aerial view up that we looked at before?
Would you like me to do that, Chairman?
If you wish. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, this application has been refused once, and it may be worthwhile us just looking again at why it was refused. And I'll just read excerpts from Mr. Farrell's decision. Despite being in the Greenbelt, the approved residential development was allowed to retain its permitted development rights when planning permission was granted. It is unclear whether the swimming pool and associated outbuildings are lawful, since no certificate of lawfulness application has been submitted. I submit to you that, in fact, this does widen out this opinion by the very good officer does widen out other things other than the tennis court. Whilst the proposed tennis court would qualify as a facility for outdoor sport and recreation, its significant physical and spatial impact it has a significant physical and spatial impact on openness. All of that top fence hedge there you see, all of that should be open ground. It should be open grassland against that hedge. This application takes what is in fact a residential use 80 metres into what was a green field in the green belt. Now, do you honestly think that is the correct thing? There are other places that this tennis court can go, and one of them is a mysterious big black shed that is not on any plan and never been seen. This is why it's important to have a site visit and where the tennis court could and should have gone. It is an incongruous development in an undeveloped greenbelt land and encroaching on the countryside. Totally right. Mr. Farrell was totally correct. The proposed development would not preserve the openness of the greenbelt and would conflict on the purposes of including land within it. Again, totally and absolutely correct. It completely blocks that view up that hedge, and which differentiates the arable land, open land, from this housing development. The proposed development is therefore inappropriate development, and which by definition is harmful to the green belt. For goodness sake, what this council stands for is the protection of the green belt. So what possible excuse, when there's other places to put it, are you putting it here? Now I turn to the what your officer has said. Given the change of red line on the site, the current officer no longer supports the reasons for refusal made previously.
Your time is up. Can you wind up,
I'll just sum up.
Very quickly.
This is because the area of the proposed development comprises a grass field within the green belt and is outside the area of existing residential complexes. So suddenly, because it's a grass field in the green belt, we can put tennis courts on it. That's the reason. There is no reason to support this application, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Padfield. We have a second speaker here, who's Mr. Danny Simmons, who's the applicant's agent. Danny, you have 3 minutes.
Committee, good evening. My name is Danny Simmons. I'm from RPS and I'm the agent acting on behalf of the applicants. As described, the application site is in the Greenbelt, but both the MPPF and your own local plan are clear that the use of land for outdoor sport in principle is appropriate in the Greenbelt. The proposals have been designed to ensure that there is no impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. the tennis court will be sensitively sited adjacent to existing and proposed hedging. And likewise, the proposed fencing will be screened by existing and proposed hedges. There are no proposals to increase the size of the residential curtilage of the adjoining Tilegate farm site. It is not proposed to change the site's greenbelt allocation, and no floodlighting is proposed. Accordingly, committee, this is a simple proposal, fully in accordance with planning policy. Reference has been made to the earlier application, but as is acknowledged in this officer's committee report, the impact on the openness of the green belt was incorrectly assessed by the previous officer. Also, committee, the fallback position was ignored. And on the fallback point, an alternative option for the tennis court is available to the applicants. It is possible to locate the tennis court within the curtilage of the Tilegate farm site by virtue of permitted development rights. However, this alternative option would mean that the tennis court would be located next to the applicant's neighbour's listed building, and accordingly is not favoured by the applicants. This fallback, committee, is material to your consideration this evening. Committee, the objector has raised a number of wider matters not relevant to this application, but committee, for the avoidance of doubt, all works undertaken on the Tilegate farm site are legitimate, having either been approved by the council or are lawful in planning terms. Committee, the reason the application is with you tonight is that there's been an objection by the parish council. Unless they speak after me, which I don't think is the normal procedure, they are not here tonight to back up their objection. But you should be aware, committee, that in their representation, the parish council made it absolutely clear that they did not object to a tennis court in this position, and all matters raised by the parish council in their representation have been fulfilled in full by the applicants. Committee, to reaffirm, this is a simple application, and the unjustified objections fuelled by a personal vendetta should not detract from the merits of this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, I strongly object to the suggestion this is a personal vendetta. It is not. It is not, Chairman, and you should give me a chance to refute that.
Mr. Padfield, you've had your chance to speak. It's not a debating forum. This is a members' committee. We're going to talk about it now. Okay. Right, members. I'm the ward member for this application. As has already been said, it's a tennis court with a bush with a fence around it, basically. It's in the green belt, but it is a sporting activity. And for those who haven't been there or seen it, you cannot see this from the road or anywhere else other than the applicant's own premises. So I don't really see how it's affecting the openness of the green belt or anything else for that matter. So I will support this. Over to the next person, which is Councillor Whitehouse, sorry.
I mean, I wasn't going to mention the point about openness of the green belt, but I think it's important to be aware the openness of the green belt is not just a consideration where it can be seen from the public highway. Otherwise, there's all sorts of things you could build as long as they were out of sight from somewhere that, you know, the public can walk. I mean, that's not my understanding of what planning policy means, and perhaps we could have that clarified. Having said that, I think in terms of mitigating the impacts on the openness of the green belt, a 2.5 metre yew hedge goes a long way towards doing that. The point I actually wanted to explore was the curtilage point, which, if I understand the report right, has been overcome by, you know, where the pen draws the red line. I mean, I'm not sure that entirely makes sense, not least because clearly it's associated and the blue line goes round the rest of the site, because it will clearly read as part of the curtilage if you did view it from outside, because there'd be a contrast between the manicured nature of a residential garden and manicured hedge and tennis court compared to the, as you said, the green field. It's clearly associated with the use of the garden, accessed as far as I can tell from the garden. There's even a condition specifically meaning that only people who can use the garden can also use a tennis court. So I'm not convinced by the argument that it's, it won't appear in the green belt as part of the residential curtilage. But I do think it's a fair point that it's mitigated by the yew hedge. That's the only thing I wanted to say, really.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking?
I'd like to.
Oh, yes. Councillor.
Could I ask the planning officer exactly, it's very confusing to have had this presented twice in 1 year, exactly what the difference is between the refusal last time and the recommendation for approval this time, because I don't want to be controversial, but as I know lots of people with tennis courts, and I'm afraid, well, not afraid, but lots of them are in fields and are in the green belt. So if you could just explain to me.
Okay, so first of all, let me come back to what Councillor Whitehouse said about so openness isn't a pure mathematical exercise. It's not about per se visibility, but because if you did take that view, then it could suffer a death by 1,000 cuts if you were to screen it appropriately. But it does have a visual element nonetheless. So the difference in this application from the previous one, there are two things. First of all, the landscaping is proposed to be higher, so that will in effect screen it more readily, and as I said, because openness does have a visual aspect as well, that does mitigate it somewhat. But importantly as well, there's a distinction between extending a residential curtilage of a dwelling, which is technically it can be an inappropriate development thing to do, because if you think about it, that area could then have permitted development rights, etc. But what's being proposed here, think of it if it was a standalone development on its own with no dwelling surrounding it. It's just a facility for outdoor sport and recreation. So there is a distinction between extending domestic curtilage, which brings with it its own impact in terms of character and PD rights as well, potentially, against what is actually proposed, which is, let's say the use were to cease. If they no longer wanted to use it as a tennis court and it was demolished, that land can then not be used by the dwellings as domestic curtilage. Do you see? There is a distinction between the two, and that's the main differences, or they are the main differences in this application from the previous refusal.
Can I ask one more? Could I ask one more question of Mr. Rogers? In order to mitigate the effect that it will have on the green belt, is it possible or is it not possible for us to put a further condition on the court that it must be finished in shades of green or black tarmac, as opposed to a bright orange and blue court which does shout at you from the green belt? Is that a possibility or not?
It's not a question I've ever had before. It's interesting. So yes, with the fencing, definitely that's something that we would propose anyway. I think if members felt that that was necessary in terms of character, then it is something we could impose. I would say it borders on whether that's reasonable, just because obviously it would need to pass the seal test in terms of, if it were to be a brown court, would that make it unacceptable in planning terms? Arguably not, unless you could make the argument that it would cause significant harm to the character or the openness of the green belt. So I'll leave that with members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on that point, do members think it would be a good idea to put a clause in, or to say that maybe it should be green or brown, or at least not orange, blue or pink or whatever? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I think there might be an issue playing green balls on a green court, playing tennis, the green strings on a green racket against a green fence. I think if we did want to put a condition like that on there, it might be before the final surface is laid, has to be consultation with the officers that it's acceptable. The officers know our views on bright red or bright yellow.
I think that would be sensible, Councillor.
Okay, we're happy with that? You're happy. Good. Anybody else with any questions or anything they'd like to say? One more.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers, is it possible we pull the plan up? And I believe there was a previous location for this, which was quite... it was actually in front of the house in a different location, if I remember the plans on this one. And also, could you point out which is the listed building that was referred to if it was moved? It doesn't look like a tennis court. Looks like down in Dorset somewhere.
Okay, so just, sorry, on the second question first, the listed buildings are the red buildings here. Yep. Tilgate. And the development site is up here, so that's where the tennis court will be. For the first question, I'm unsure exactly where the original one was or this other location you're talking about. Let me put the plan up. Is this one helpful?
If I remember the previous application, where the main house is there, I think there was a suggestion it was going in front of the house and the road, different change in use of the roads that were going in and out. One was going to be closed off, but Parish Council didn't want that, I think, from remember the previous application. So where it's sited at the moment, my view is that it's a better use and better location where you've got it there. Plus, I think also we have to remember it's not just for the use of the one house that's on the site. It's for use for all the persons that are there. So it's a multi-occupied, effective tennis court.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, anybody else? Don't think so. Right, we're down to the vote now. So those in favour...
Well, do we have to vote on the conditions first? Whether we're asking... Do we have to vote? Do we have to vote first?
Well, the condition is that we're going to add that in. Will you come back? Okay.
Yeah, was that voted on?
But we haven't voted. I
think that needs to be voted
on. Okay, so the condition is that before any work starts on the surface of the tennis court, the applicant consults with the planning department on its suitability. Those in favour?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, once again, we're through to the vote. So those in favour of the officer's recommendation to grant, please raise a hand.
$12, Chairman.
Those against?
2, Chairman.
Abstentions?
We've only got 14 tonight, so that should be everybody.
Okay, in which case the application has been granted subject to conditions. Thank you very much. The next item, any other business? Any other business?
No, Chairman.
Public and press exclusion, not applicable, so therefore I close this meeting at 7:28. Thank you, everybody. Okay.